What is up YouTube, I'm Royal, I'm rank 1 Wild Rift, and today I'm bringing you a tier list video to see who the best champions are for this patch. Even though it was a small patch, there weren't many changes. We also had a hotfix on the previous patch, so an updated tier list is definitely needed on my part. So let's start off with my favorite lane, the mid lane. Syndra did receive a pretty major buff that was definitely not needed. She was already a god tier champion and now she's even stronger. The main problem with Syndra is that she can be very easily countered by champions like Zed or Fizz or Kassadin. I'm actually going to be uploading a Zed video very soon that will show you exactly how to counter Syndra mid. However, she's still a god tier champion in the mid lane together with Jace and Yone. Especially Jace. Honestly, Jace could be in god plus tier if I could put him anywhere. He's so strong in the mid lane right now. In the S tier, Aurelion Sol has received some massive buffs in the hotfix and he's now an S tier champion. His early game is a little rough. However, mid lane is the perfect lane for him to just sit back, scale, farm, and become the late game monster that he can be. Same thing goes for the Kassadin that's also joining us in the S tier. Fizz has actually been downgraded to the A tier after the slight nerfs that are actually pretty impactful towards his gameplay because his snowball just is not as effective anymore. Let's move on to the Baron lane, and here is where we have a few changes. We have Mundo joining the champions in the S tier. Mundo is absolutely oppressive, especially when it comes to lower ranks. So if you're not Challenger, if you're not Sovereign, if you're not Legend in Legendary queue, Mundo is going to be extremely strong because players just don't really know how to deal with him in lower levels. The usual S tier champions will remain in the Baron lane. Camille, Darius, Fiora, Renekton, Jax, Aatrox, and Ornn. These are just a level above every other Baron laner. They have barely any counters outside of themselves. Obviously, Jax will be countering Camille. However, every champion in A, B, C, and D tiers will not really be able to stand to those S tier champions. However, the A tier and the B tier champions are still decent and pretty good to play if you know how to play them well. Especially Teemo, this is a champion that I've been having a lot of success with. So you can still have a lot of success with the A tier champions. Let's move on to the jungle, where of course we have Lee Sin and Kha'Zix in the god tier again. Honestly, this is another place where I could easily put Lee Sin above god tier. This champion is probably the strongest in the game. He's absolutely insane. His early game is good, his late game is good, his ganks are good, his fighting is good, his clear is good. This champion is unbelievably overbuffed, and in my opinion, he's the strongest champion in the game. The rest of the S tier champions are all really good picks. Even if you're not able to get Lee Sin or Kha'Zix, any of these S tier junglers will be really good for carrying and snowballing. And then in the A tier, we have other really strong junglers that you can pick. B tier champions are just general good champions if you can play them based on what your team comp needs. Obviously, if you need a tank, there isn't a single tank in the AS or god tier. So if you want to go for tank Mundo jungle, for example, B tier champions are still fine to build the best comp possible. Moving on to the ADCs, not any major changes. Varus and Ezreal still continue to dominate. Obviously, Varus is very flexible, being able to go crit, AD, AP. The most common build nowadays is this hybrid AD-AP build that's really good on Varus. Obviously, Ezreal is very hard to play, so if you don't have a lot of experience with him, I recommend sticking to different ADCs like Varus. Then in the S tier, we have our hyper carries like Tristana and Kai'Sa. Caitlyn has been slightly downgraded because she's just not able to keep up compared to the strong laning face-off champions like Draven and Miss Fortune, while also not having the late game carry potential of Tristana and Kai'Sa. In the A tier, we have generically good ADC champions. Obviously, Ziggs is an AP carry that you can pick if your team needs magic damage. What I would say is that these champions are more situational. So if your team needs engage, you can go Ashe. If your team really needs to destroy tanks, you can go Vayne. So A and B and C tier are more situational picks. Obviously, I would avoid C tier. Senna is more of a support, especially when you play her as a support with a farming bruiser That's where Senna is the best. So if you're playing like Senna Galio, Senna Nasus, Senna Gragas, things like that. Moving on to the supports. Here, I think the meta has shifted more towards engage supports and less towards enchanters. The best enchanters in the game, Lulu and Yumi, are still going to be in S tier. Karma is more of a mage, but can also be described as an enchanter, and she's also very strong because of her poke. Lux and Zyra are your major options in A tier. Soraka is just not going to be as good with all these tanky engage supports like Pyke, like Thresh, like Nautilus, like Leona, that can easily pin her down and destroy her. So that's my opinion for this patch's tier list. If you guys have different opinions, I would love to hear it in the comments. Discuss with me and let's figure out what the best champions are going into this patch. With Legendary Queue opening up, we want to find what's best so we can climb. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like and subscribe for more Wild Rift content.